So I'm going to let Sheila introduce the panelists. Obviously, probably none of them really need an introduction, but I'm going to let her do it anyway. But I do want to introduce Sheila Boyington, CEO of Learningblade. They also, as I mentioned earlier, sponsored our reception last night. And again, Sheila has been a great friend to this initiative, a friend to me. She's told me before that I'm her friend, so I think I can safely say that. So I appreciate you being here, Sheila, and appreciate you moderating this panel.
Well, and I appreciate you, Anthony, and your lovely wife, Michelle, who is also really one of the reasons Anthony's so great. I'm a wife, too. My husband's here, too, so I kind of say those things. So this is just wonderful to have an opportunity. I cannot even tell you how great it's been hearing from the students and then hearing from leaders who are in this work. But I think right now, we're going to hear from people that can actually do a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. So no pressure, but and are doing them. And so it's just great when we get to have leaders like yourselves, join and be with people that are in the classroom, working with states, doing all of these different things and hearing your vision. So that's really what this panel is about. And for those of you that don't know, this is Superintendent Baesler from North Dakota. Kirsten, thank you. And this is Superintendent Balow from Wyoming. And then this is Superintendent Johnny Key, who does, or actually Secretary, I'm sorry, you got an elevated Secretary, Johnny Key from Arkansas, and who is a fellow chemical engineer, just like myself and Dane. And so just this work is so important to the future of our country, and I'm just thrilled to be part of today. So just in thinking about this panel, back in 1962, John F. Kennedy said, "We chose to go to the moon in this decade and to do other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard." We've heard a lot today about things that are hard. But that statement actually catalyzed a lot of innovation for our country. And so I just wanted to take a minute and talk to each of you and hear a little bit about what your thoughts are around the current kind of what is our moment, and have we had it already? I mean, obviously Hadi, gave us some of that, or do we still need it to make computer science and coding and all of that really a reality? So Secretary Key, have we properly motivated, do you think, our country around computer science? And obviously, I know there's more work to do, but is there more work to do to motivate people?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. First, I just want to say, Sheila, thank you for being here and being such a great partner. And I want to thank my colleagues, my counterparts from other states. I don't know if you realize, but these two ladies are leaders of all the state superintendents, positions of leadership in CCSSO through the years, and really mentors to me because of the experience that they've had and have been able to share with all of us that are in very similar roles. So thank you, ladies, for coming to Arkansas. I've been trying to get folks to come to Arkansas, and I finally made it. Two of you finally got here. So, the 1962 JFK quote is great. I like to go back a few more years, back to the Louisiana Purchase, because about 2 hours east of here is the Louisiana Purchase State Park. And in that park, very small park, but there's a monument that was the starting point for the survey that began in 1815. So you hear a lot about Lewis and Clark and St. Louis being the gateway to the west, but the survey, the hard work started, and the long work started right here in what is now Arkansas. And so there are opportunities through history to see where Arkansas has really birthed a lot of vision, a lot of opportunity. And computer science is certainly one of those. So I think in Arkansas I think nationwide, we're still working on it. So yes and yes is the answer to that question. We have properly motivated and inspired people to get more involved. But yes, there is more work to do because as we have seen numbers that there are more students that need to know about it. There are more communities that need access, and the long-term benefit is going to require ongoing motivation of our communities.
Yeah, so true, so true. So Superintendent Baesler, so can you tell us, is there some sort of single message that I think everyone can rally around, and maybe, how that relates to some of the things you're doing in North Dakota?
I think there is. I think, and I think that's why we have seen the success in most recent years that we've seen in this area in North Dakota is rallying around a basic singular idea. And for us, it's the understanding that computer science, cybersecurity is foundational knowledge. It's not a nice to know, it's a need to know. And that this isn't just an educational issue. The educators in our community understand it in a way, but so do our business and industry leaders, so do our economic developers in every single one of our communities in the state of North Dakota. This is a security issue. This is a national security issue and a state security issue. And so I think that understanding, we are at a point in time where this nation, our state certainly, we need to have some common ground. And computer science, cybersecurity is the common ground that we all understand is critically important. And so I believe that that's and as you speak to legislators, which is so much part of our job, is working with our governors and our other executive branch leaders, with our legislative body, to speak to a legislator and to say to him or her, there isn't a time that your daughter, your granddaughter will have less technology in their life. And so, you know, when you think about nearly 20% of 8-year-olds have a smartphone. So those are some real unifying messages that take it out of simply the K12 education arena and put it smack dab in a place that we understand is foundational.
Yeah, so true. And, you know, I think to your point, like, you know, we just kind of take it for granted almost in some ways. So I think, you know, for you, Superintendent Balow, you know, what do you think is kind of the big picture for students and parents to understand? Because I think, you know, for a lot of us, we kind of live in this space and we talk about it, we hear it, we think we're doing it every day. But for the majority of people, it's not something that, you know, they're accustomed to. So give us an idea of what you think is a big picture for parents and students to really understand this.
Yeah, you know, in education, for years and years, we've been talking about sort of this need for a disruption. Well, we got it.
Yeah.
And so now is the time to leverage that. And I'm probably dating myself by saying that I think a lot about Stephen Covey and that sense of urgency and the sense of importance. Both of those pieces are in place. And honestly, there's such excitement and that sense of urgency and importance around this issue that it's not difficult to get students rallied behind it, interested in it, inspired by it. We saw that up on the stage earlier, and parents supportive of it. So this is our moment to really leverage that. You know, in terms of state leadership, I think there are 3 areas where we can really help to underpin that sense of urgency and importance, and that's in making sure that we have good policy framework in place. Thank you, Code.org and Arkansas, because we've just done what you've done and what you've told us to do, and we pulled it off. And another is making sure that as state leaders we're building partnerships not just with business and industry and with legislatures and other policymakers, but also with our students and families. And a lot of that is dispelling some myths around computer science. It's not playing on computers. It's not playing with phones. It's not even consuming technology. It's innovating, it's creating, it's collaborating. And so as state leaders, we really have this opportunity to help dispel some of those myths and just cast a bigger net on computer science.
Yeah, so true. And you know, I think you already talked about this a little bit, but you know, like there's been successes and some struggles, I'm guessing, in, you know, getting us to this point and where we need to go further. So could each of you maybe share like 2 or 3 sort of things that worked on the ground, you know, because we talk about the policy is definitely there, but there's a ground game that needs to be also executed. And, you know, some of the successful ground game things you've done and some other things that maybe have been a struggle. So maybe we'll start with you, Secretary Keith.
Well, having a governor, one who's it was his initiative, a campaign promise which was a fulfillment, and then continued to be a focus throughout his time now as governor, certainly has been critical to the success. You know, the governor goes on coding tours every year. He visits schools to see how it's going. But here was kind of an on-the-ground thing that may be different than any other state. he will actually call superintendents. He will call them directly, and he will either say, hey, I see your numbers and you did a great job. Or if he sees a district that may not have the numbers they need, then he'll call and say, hey, what's happening in your district? You don't have very many computer science kids. What's going on with that? Well, in the superintendent circles, that word gets around pretty quick. And nobody wants to be on the receiving end of the second type of call. They're just having that level of consistent involvement from the very top has been crucial to our success.
Yeah, definitely. Any struggles? Anything that?
The struggle is just that sense of, many times we see a challenge and we look at it from a deficit perspective, and how are we going to afford this? And really, the governor is also leading in that effort, working with Anthony, with our team at the department, to try to take the money issue off the table, as far as making sure that teachers, students, districts have access to what they need. That the financial burden is always an issue anytime you roll out a new initiative of any type, but especially one like this that is not. It wasn't common in the U.S. to have a statewide initiative of this nature. So those have been, and those are struggles that we continue to deal with at the local level. And we're just happy to know that we believe we're in a sustainable place right now from a state funding standpoint.
Yeah, critical part of the equation. So how about you, Superintendent Baesler?
So I think the thing that has moved the needle for us in North Dakota was exemplified when you had the student panel. Thank you for that. That was a brilliant idea. This is my 32nd year in education, and one thing that has frustrated me throughout those 32 years has been the amount of time that adults sit around in rooms talking about what's best for students. And very rarely are there students in the room, and sometimes it takes us an hour or two, or a day or two, to even ask the question, what do our students need and what do they want? So that has been a main component in our work in North Dakota, is really asking those students what they want and they need. And they are our customers. Everything that we do in the state education agency needs to begin and end with their students in mind, and that's ever changing. And so helping them, or having them help us drive the demand. And I believe it was Sarah this morning said, it starts, she thought possibly 5th grade. Well, in talking to our students in North Dakota, I learned from them that by the end of 3rd grade, they have a pretty good idea of what they think they're good at or what they want to be. And so I'm going to argue that 3rd grade might be too late to introduce. And so that's why we're really pushing the investment of kindergarten through 3rd grade and building that demand, getting those kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade teachers trained, engaged, whether it be the classroom teacher or the music teacher, or the art teacher, or the library media specialist, someone in their life. And so that's been very successful, because then those students get excited, and then their parents get excited about it, and then those parents are in every occupation, every walk of life, and they build the demand, and schools' jobs are to be responsive to what their communities want and ask of them. So that ground game has been exceptionally helpful for us, is to build the demand in our students, and then bring in those parents and bring in those community members to visit with those legislators to say, this is what we need in our schools because it's helping.
Great. And how about you, Dr.
We first of all, we named our initiative Boot Up Wyoming, and as such, it's been really fun to roll out and sort of pile on to the initiative in a lot of different ways. And completely concur with my colleagues. Maybe just a couple of things that I would add is one of my main initiatives since I've been state superintendent has been career and technical education, and computer science folds into that so well. Whether we're talking about federal Perkins money, or in Wyoming, we talk a lot about Plan A, college, career, and military. And to talk about prosperity, like Hadi referenced it this morning, the return on investment in information, computers, and engineering, not all of that takes a college degree. And so really being able to tuck and fold computer science into career and technical education, college college readiness or college track and military aspirations has been really helpful. And the other thing that I think as a state leader and that the three of us and our colleagues across the nation have the ability to do is prioritize it within our own state education agencies. So wherever possible, we add computer science, especially with underrepresented groups. In Wyoming, that's typically our Native American learners as grant preferences. And it could be a little bit of a one-off grant, but putting computer science with underrepresented groups in as a grant preference, or at least a topical awareness in every grant that we put out, has been really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I think, earlier was talked about, and sometimes we don't like to talk about this, but it's been front and center today, is about the money aspect on both sides. The money for, actual students winning, money for doing great on the AP test, but funding that is needed from the state also to fund programs and other initiatives. And so, I think I love that you talk about that.
So I was pleased to hear the previous panel have that conversation too, about funding is important. Yeah. And, if we say this is important, then put your money where you're at and where your words are, right? And I think that's critically important. I think we have an opportunity, and that's something that I have done in North Dakota as well, is I am dedicating a significant of our state set-aside funding to ensure that we have this set of teachers that are in our classrooms, in our schools right now, right today, being trained and being paid for their time, not only for the courses, but the time for them to take. Our goal is to have one computer science or cybersecurity credentialed teacher for every 200 students in every school. And so that's the money that I've dedicated to it. Let's invest in it in that way.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I think you are the first state that actually put cybersecurity standards in place. So can you tell a little bit more about that? I know,
Sure.
Governor Hutchinson has worked on cybersecurity, but I think you guys did the standards first.
So it is. So 2013, I took office, and prior to that, I'd spent time as a classroom teacher, a technology integration specialist, a library media specialist, and an assistant principal, as well as a school board member. And during that time, it was seeing that I understood the difference that it could make, and I understood the need for computer science, cybersecurity. And so we did come up with a three-pronged plan, if you will, that said, number one, we need to develop standards. Number two, we need to have the authority to add the credential to our teacher license, our teachers that are licensed, and we need to invest in the funding for the professional development. When we came to building standards, computer science was critically important, but every one of our students in North Dakota has access to, every one of our schools has 1 gigabyte connectivity. So all 483 school buildings has 1 gigabyte connectivity to all of our schools, which means that there was a high degree of connectedness, and all of those students are on our state network, or on our state network. And so that's the state network that our Bank of North Dakota is on, that our Teachers Fund for Retirement, that our pension, all the list goes on and on. So there was a very heightened need to ensure that our students that were using our network were educated and trained, and not they were going on as kindergartners, they needed to be trained. And so that's why it was really important. We integrated cybersecurity in addition to computer science and in our state. And so that's where we went. The third prong of our plan in 2017 was to get the funding. We got 2 of the 3 legs of the stool and have been able to move forward, but now with the ESSER funding through COVID relief, we have now been able to add that 3rd leg.
Yeah, the ESSER funding certainly has had a positive impact on, at least some of these issues. So for you in Wyoming, I know you guys have your performance and your content standards, and that's going to be required, I believe, after in the next school year.
Yep. So
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So our computer science standards, kindergarten through 12, will be implemented fully across the state next year and required. We have lots and lots of early adopters, which is very, very exciting to see. Our content and performance standards for computer science, it was the first set of standards that had been added statutorily ever. beyond what was put in there in about 1995. And I'm looking out, seeing smiling faces from Jeremy at ECS, who was on the previous panel, Code.org, Microsoft, Apple, because they were the new partners in that effort. This was not something that was just done alone. It's something that we built a lot of excitement about. But once the legislation passed, it wasn't over. There was still opposition with our State Board of Education and with teachers who were really scared of change. And so Boot Up Wyoming really has turned many days into an exercise in educating the adults in the room, right? In underpinning or underscoring that excitement and that urgency and that importance with what people are scared of, which is change or more. And so that's certainly been fruitful as we've gone through the standards development process, but there's already a need to make changes. Just last week I had a meeting about incorporating Bitcoin as part of our financial literacy. Does that go into CTE or financial literacy or computer science? We're doing a lot of talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and robotics, not just for fun, but actually to work and get jobs done. So how do we fold all of this in? And I think it will be ever evolving, and it doesn't look anything like any other content area because it's fluid and because it's new and necessary in ways that other content areas aren't.
And it's ever changing.
Yes.
Like you said, it's just going to keep changing as we go through. So Secretary Key, so obviously Arkansas is a model in so many things. I love the stipend model, et cetera. So let's talk a little bit, you mentioned it earlier, about teachers, because I think that's a critical component in terms of, having teachers that can actually execute and teach the things that maybe they never even were heard of before they graduated from high school. So what have you guys done that you think has really been successful in, moving your needle to that many teachers in the state?
Yeah. Well, the governor mentioned the headline numbers earlier this morning. It's now over 600.
600, yep.
Which is just a fraction of the need, obviously, as we're moving into the new requirement for graduation. And so really trying to motivate, money can be a motivator, but it is not the motivator. We have, I think, $640,000 in our high school program, stipend program, or bonus program to about 200 teachers. And we also set up a K-8 program. And I think about 470, 480 teachers have taken advantage of that, and 28 of those teachers have gone on to get full CS certification, which is not necessary, but they really become ambassadors. Mm-hmm. And that's what the bonus program and stipend program, it's more than just saying, okay, come here and attend this PD and we're going to give you a check. It's really, become an ambassador for this, and this is a small token because we know that those teachers, Ms. Ropp that's here, Ms. Kincannon, the others, that they are going to spread the word in their region, in their professional organizations. That's where we get more buy-in and more, the recruitment becomes a lot easier at that point. But you heard the story from the students about paying for AP. You get a 5 on an AP, you get 1,000. That is a motivator for kids, let me tell you. It's also a motivator for parents. One of the first years that we did that program, I attended one of our high schools at Fort Smith in western Arkansas, and there were some students that were on the list that weren't there because they were working. That's great. It was an afternoon assembly, big celebration, but the parents were there to pick up the check because it was that important to the parents and to the kids that one of them said, well, my son said, Mom, I really need you to be there because I want you to get that check. They wanted it in their hand by the end of the day. So it is something that we have seen great success on. And again, we have a lot of creative. Anthony is one of the most creative thinkers that I've worked with. And he has a team of creative thinkers now that come up with different ideas about how we can make those things better. The stipend program is certainly one that has contributed greatly to our growth in the number of teachers ready to go into those classrooms and deliver for our kids.
And I will certainly echo on that Anthony is very creative. So earlier this year, he called us at Learningblade and said, you guys, can you add a 5-week coding block class for us? And we said, yes, sir. And so we'll be launching that this in January. So really excited to do that, but really, just applaud all the efforts. So you talked a little bit about your teachers and really having that be important. Can you share a little bit more about what you're doing?
So I think that's, I love the quote by John F. Kennedy, and I was taking notes, and I thought of that same quote. It's like, this is hard. Adding it to be a high school graduation requirement will be hard, may be hard. Having enough teachers in the classroom, that's something we often hear as, from our educational community. We already have a teacher shortage. We have a hard enough time finding an English teacher or a math teacher, a science teacher. How are you going to expect us to find a computer science teacher? That's another hard problem. But we don't do this because it's easy. We do this because it's hard. And we have the constituents in my state, those business and industry, the cybersecurity, those that are, knowing that it's a security issue, knowing that it's an economic development issue. They're saying to the educational community, okay, figure that out because you're the expertise. If you are the experts, you are the education experts. If you want us to figure it out as legislators, we can do that. And every educator said, no, please don't. And so, but they have given us the call to say, this is hard, but you as adults and professionals, we know you can figure it out. So let's talk about the teacher shortage, and you obviously are not going to need to have as much training or as a high level of a credential if you're teaching kindergartners or first or second graders as you would a high school AP computer science class. So what we did in North Dakota is we have 3 levels of credential. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3 in computer science and cybersecurity. And so we developed, that's the authority that was given to our department in 2017. So we have that, we understand that it will be different. We need to be thinking about professional development and certification of our teachers differently. Traditionally in K12, traditionally education, we talk about sending our teachers to professional development to learn better, if they're a biology teacher, to learn how to do biology content. If they're an English teacher, how to become better English teachers. We need to flip that. We need to drastically upend that and not think about getting additional teachers in our classroom, adding additional teachers, but reskilling and retooling our existing teachers in our classrooms today and making sure that they can integrate. And we heard that from our student panel. That's how it made it more alive. It came alive to them. Teach that music teacher, that arts teacher, that PE teacher even, how to integrate coding and computer science into their work. And then it can come alive. And then partner with those partners that Jillian mentioned, Microsoft Teals, Palo Alto, CyberOrg with the Homeland Securities, Code.org, CS for all of those opportunities, partner with that private sector and get our teachers the support that they need instead of trying to find. We're all, with the Great Resignation, competing for the same number of employees. So let's think differently about the way that we do this, and then let's pay those teachers for their time to get retooled and reskilled.
Yeah, I mean, so true. Totally agree. And I've said our healthcare workers have been our heroes during this pandemic, but quite frankly, our teachers have been too. I mean, one day you're in school, one day you're remote, back and forth, and they had to adjust to so much. And we know we don't pay our teachers anywhere near what they're worth. But I think it is important, to help teachers of different backgrounds understand that they can integrate coding. Just because you're good in English doesn't mean you shouldn't consider a career in computer science or STEM. And
I will just add on to that too, to bust the myths of what computer science is. Yeah. I don't know, in North Dakota, one of the very first things we do as preschool or kindergarten teachers is we hand a child a pot of soil and a seed. And I think that's probably universal in every kindergarten or preschool classroom. And we don't do that because we expect that child is going to grow up to be an agronomist or a botanist. But it's because that idea of if you put a seed in some soil, add water and sunlight, if this, then that happens. And it's because their food is part of everyday life. In 4th grade, we teach the electrical circuit. not because we think they're going to be electrical engineers or electricians, but it's part of their everyday life. We need to teach them how it works and how to protect themselves from it and how to harness it for good. So that's the same way that we need to think about computer science and cybersecurity. I believe we focus a little bit too much on the high school, and it's too late. This is foundational. And so if we can bust the myth of what computer science is, teachers can become less afraid of it and get really excited about how they can teach their students to harness it and be protected from it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely. We had an opportunity one time to go into a classroom, and we took a box of cereal, and we had like kindergartners, and we were showing them and just talking to them the number of computer science type of careers that were represented by that box, you know? And I said, just look around the room. Is there anything in here that you think didn't have a computer involved in creating it at some point? And I think, to your point, that's where we have to start. So, you know, definitely talk about the teacher piece, Superintendent Balow, but also, you know, about the younger, like what you're talking about. You know, how can we better reach those younger kids?
Yeah, well, Johnny and Kirsten and all of our colleagues across the nation and I have opportunities to visit classrooms just like Governor Hutchinson and others, and that's been so powerful. You know, one of the myths that we had to dispel or bust in Wyoming was that computer science meant working on technology. And so in our standards, we marked all of our unplugged or standards that didn't require technology with a little plug-in. And they're almost 90% unplugged in kindergarten through third grade, and about 50% from in fourth and fifth grades. And that's a great way to bust the myths. An even better way is to visit a kindergarten classroom or an after-school program where kids are coding. And that means that they're taping grids on the floor, the size of this area right here, and writing code for each other to get from one end of the grid to the other and saying, oh wait, I didn't mean to make you go there, come back. And they fix their coding on paper and have them go through the maze again. And then they make it more challenging by putting some Legos in one square and say you have to pick up the Legos on the way from one end of the grid to the other end of the grid. That's what coding looks like in the early grades. And that's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of problem solving. It's a different way of collaborating. And frankly, it is our future. It's our future workforce. And, you know, we've talked a little bit about business and industry. They were a huge partner in our state and continue to be in our computer science efforts. Hadi talked about the return on investment in education. Oh boy, business and industry recognizes the return on their investment by supporting computer science in public schools and by making sure that their workforce, their future workforce, is skilled so that they don't have to pay to upskill them or reskill them.
Yeah, so true. And you know, that economic benefit is also for the states because obviously it was talked about earlier, increases the tax base and, you know, all of that. And that's not often thought about when we're making investments like this. And it should be. Obviously, this state, they understand that. So I think, Secretary Key, you know, talk a little bit about the cybersecurity work that has started here in Arkansas. And I know there was a recent task force that was announced and the work that is being engaged in that.
Well, and that's another part of the success of this overall initiative is that we weren't satisfied for rolling it out and saying, okay, we're done. You know, we really have adopted that continuous cycle of inquiry, always asking how can we get better and what's next. And the cybersecurity became the what's next. You could pick up the newspaper and you could see evidence of why that's so important because of the attacks.
Yep.
Personal attacks on, you know, identity theft or banking theft or you know, school districts and ransomware attacks on school districts. And so much of that affects our everyday lives. I mean, if you don't think these issues affect our everyday lives, drive by a new car dealership right now. And you could see the impact that the supply chain is having on just getting cars that people, you know, if they have money, they can't get what they want. Cybersecurity became part of that also because of the governor's background in Homeland Security. He knew the scary stories before the rest of the world knew the scary stories. And for him, it became, if we're going to be a leader in computer science, we have to be a leader in cybersecurity. And when we revised our standards, cybersecurity became part of that revision. Our standards go all the way down to kindergarten. So again, doesn't mean you're plugged in all the time, but it does mean our students need to understand how to think and how to recognize, when you think about a smart home and the gaps, security gaps that can occur in a smart home, cybersecurity becomes very real, and the students that are going to graduate, as we mentioned earlier, in the 2030s, how different is it going to be? It's going to be ingrained all across their lives. So cybersecurity became something not just for business and industry, not just for the tech industry. We also expanded partnerships, and that's one of the things that any state that's looking to do this, rely on partnerships. It's so critical to make sure that you have those in place. But partnering with University of Arkansas at Little Rock for a cyber gym, partnering with the University of Central Arkansas for a cyber range, so you can simulate those types of attacks and the solutions to those attacks and the workarounds and the protections. All of those pieces work together, so really you do have that K through career continuum, so that it's touched on at every point on that continuum.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's so important that this stays sort of front and center, and obviously because of the media, the way we transmit information now, everybody knows that 20% of 8-year-olds have cell phones. That scares me right there to know that. So Superintendent Balow, your daughter is actually in the Army, is that right? And so I think firsthand, cybersecurity for you might be front and center. Tell us a little bit about what you are planning and doing in Wyoming around that.
Well, I'm just the supportive and very excited Army mom, and she's transitioning from active to guard right now, but she's an explosive specialist. And I remember the first time I saw her in uniform, and she had her pad of paper in her leg and showed me all of her mathematical calculations she did to figure out how much explosives go into a rock or a tree. And I asked her, "Who checks your math?" She said, "No one, I'm the end of the line." I raised her. Thank you, U.S. Army, for instilling faith in her. All jokes aside, when Hadi mentioned this morning that 2/3 of the high-skilled visas coming into the United States are in computers, information, and engineering, I could just put a hard stop right there. For so many reasons beyond security and beyond making sure that our military is skilled. Inspiration, whether you're in the military or in a career or in college, comes the same way. And that's in K-12 experiences. And so being able to prepare our military force to keep our country and our world safe, making sure that we have students who are entering the military or graduates that are entering the military with the skills and the inspiration to pursue those careers with military is very important.
For sure.
And it makes moms sleep better at night.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about the future now. So obviously we talked a lot about what you're doing currently, but obviously driverless cars, AI, robotics, we've got so many things on the horizon. And can you share a little bit about maybe your vision or what's something that you see that you feel like you want to try to do in your state, or you've seen in other states, or how are you going to continue the great work that you're already doing and even expand it? So we'll start with you, Superintendent Baesler.
I want to check off all 9 of Code.org's recommendations. But I do want to do that. But that's very clear for us. We have our CS plan. We just adopted that, and it's very clear. We want one credentialed teacher for every 200 students in every building in the state of North Dakota. We want, as part of school approval process, We are striving to have, in order to be approved to operate, whether you're public or private in the state of North Dakota, you must have computer science in elementary, middle, and high school. And eventually, we want that graduation requirement as part of what the portrait of a graduate looks like in North Dakota, so we can be what we call choice ready, post-secondary, work ready, or military ready. We believe it's just foundational. I think what the actual next steps are is we are putting together a task force, because we just concluded our special session in the first week of November, and our legislature gave me a directive and said the state superintendent shall work with workforce development and the K12 community to provide a report to them by September of 2022, September 1st of 2022, how to best integrate computer science and cybersecurity in all elementary, middle, and high schools in the state of North Dakota. Not if we should not study it, how to best integrate it. So that was a call, that was a shot across the bow that said, if you don't figure it out as a workforce in a K-12 community, when we convene in January of 2023, we'll figure it out for you.
Okay.
And so that's pretty clear for us what we want to and need to accomplish.
You will not be sleeping.
We will not be sleeping. It's good work, though.
It's good work. It is. It's very rewarding. So for you as well?
Ditto. And I'll just circle back to something that I said a little bit earlier and say that, right now, if I open Cash App to give my son gas money, I can give him cryptocurrency. I can give him Bitcoin. And I think it's going to be really important for all of us as leaders in this education space to never ever be steeped in the what we did or what we thought was important last year, but to always be looking ahead, because that's what this generation is demanding. That's what the workforce is demanding. That's obviously what the future is demanding. And so maybe just staying moving. And never become motionless in this space is going to be really, really important, and for me, very exciting to continue to watch. I guess I'd just again underscore the excitement that's built around this. We have lots of pilot programs on our Wind River reservation and other places in our state, again, with the underrepresented groups, and making sure that we take opportunities with our partners, Code.org and so many others, to just really highlight those pilot programs and those success stories. It's wonderful to be here, but the highlight of the day today was the student panel, and they tell the stories best. And so if we can just continue to build that excitement and enthusiasm through their lens, it's going to be hugely impactful for the next generation.
Totally agree. Hearing from those students was like giving me chills. It was wonderful. How about you, Secretary Keith?
It's making that transition from the K-12 conversation to the workforce conversation, the post-secondary conversation. We now have a position in Dr. Tina Moore, she's back there somewhere, that she is working on what the transition looks like now. How do we make sure that our students know, one of the greatest things that I heard and one of the saddest things that I'm very happy for the student that's going full scholarship to WashU, but instantly I asked myself, why couldn't we get her full ride to somewhere in Arkansas? Why do we keep losing that talent? So how do we make sure that the opportunities are there so that we don't see the talent? Now, hopefully Lamai will come back. That's what we want. We want her to come back to Arkansas, build on that WashU education. But really, it's about how do we make sure that the career and that it's not just the high school to college pipeline. It's about what are the career opportunities, and that's where we're getting ready to launch CareerBlade, another partnership with Learningblade as part of the Ready for Life platform. Ready for Life is something the governor wanted to create out of COVID to connect employers and to help qualify more Arkansans to fill those jobs that are out there. Having computer science, having STEM, having these types of positions connected through, and that feedback loop, so that you have a component that can go back and teach these elementary students, middle school students, what these jobs look like. because it's got to be that loop of communication that will make sure that our future is bright as we want it to be.
Yes, great. So I don't know, do we have time for a question, Anthony? Okay, maybe one or two questions from the audience. You answered all the questions.
Well, if we've got a second, Sheila,
yes.
I want to make sure, one of the things that we do to support this initiative is learning from things that worked in the past. And one of the things that have worked well in the past, and we have one of our co-op directors here, Mr. Grant, but working through our education service cooperatives, we've had great success with math and science specialists, literacy specialists throughout the state. And we have a great team of computer science specialists, and they've been working really hard with Anthony to help put this on. I want to ask you to stand, but raise your hand to the CS team out there.
And I think one thing that before we leave here, I don't think we'd be doing fully our job, or I feel I wouldn't, unless we talk about the equity issue that that Hadi brought up, that we've talked on a little bit. So as Johnny mentioned, we're all members of the Council of Chief State School Officers. Jillian just went off the board of directors. She was our past president. She was our president during the pandemic. Holds the distinct honor of being the only president of CCSSO that never chaired an in-person meeting. And so, and I am on that board and was just selected as president-elect of CCSSO. In 2016, CCSSO selected and adopted 10 principles of equity. And so I think that as we talk about equity, that means something different for all of us. In North Dakota and Wyoming, it means access. It means rural students that are going to school. There's 8 students in the entire school, and they're 150 miles away from, the nearest McDonald's, if you will. And so what does that mean? And equity, and certainly both Jillian and I share this, and so does Johnny. We have students in our schools that are marginalized in one way or another, whether it be through geographic location, race, ethnicity. So just a lot of work still needs to be done in that, but the computer science issue is something that is unifying. Computer science, and the panel before pointed this out, if intentionally focused on, it can be this great skills equalizer. I'm so excited that code.org, the Hour of Code, we are planning our emphasis this year with the governor's office and our office will be on Standing Rock Indian Reservation. And thank you to all of you that are working to make those connections. The relevant teaching, the dance party that will integrate which is the dance, or the grass dance, or the jingle dance that is so important to our Native American culture. We can do that with our young people. Our 5th graders are going to be doing a beating exercise in coding. And so those types of things are very important, but I think we need to understand that this is the great equalizer, and this is, again, common ground.
Yeah, equity definitely has to be front and center while we're doing this work around computer science, particularly rural communities, as you mentioned, because that is the bulk of the United States. And a lot of times we're just talking about big cities and not talking about those communities. So so thank you to each of you for what you're doing for students. I mean, just thank you to Governor Hutchinson. I don't know if he's still here, but for amazing leadership. Really looking forward to working with NGA and seeing how that initiative, really gets spread across the country, because governors I know are concerned with it. And of course to you, to Secretary Key and Anthony, for having this wonderful gathering. Just really appreciate having a chance to be part of it. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you to our panelists again, and thank you to Sheila for moderating. Appreciate you, Sheila. And you're right, I am the person I am because of my lovely wife, so I appreciate you mentioning that. So,
Tell her
I also want to just briefly, Superintendent Balow, right? Balow, I'm sorry. I even asked Dr. Pfeffer to help me with the pronunciation. I forgot it between there and here, so I apologize. But I want to thank you for your daughter's service, and I want to go ahead and I'll ask everybody in the room, if you have a person of your family that's in the military, we appreciate them, and we appreciate you for being a family member. So if we can just give them a round of applause, I'd appreciate it.